Jim Rickards has pointed out some real chaos happening around the world, and he thinks that everyone will be wiped out in the next 30 days. That's a huge claim. Why does Jim Rickards believe in this theory? That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. So stay with us till the end to find out some sensible points put forth by Jim Rickards. Let's get started. According to Jim Rickards, today we are living in a messy world. To begin with, have a look at the supply chain. Even before things went bad, cracks were showing. Then COVID came along and destroyed everything that was still standing. Just when you thought things couldn't get any worse, the war in Ukraine broke out. But to be honest, this mess has roots that go back a bit further. Do you remember when Trump started the trade war with China in 2018? That's where the first table fell. And as in any good play, the rest start to fall one by one after the first. Now, he's not saying that we are completely doomed, but if you ask us what's going on, we would say it's a mix of a lot of different things. Things like Biden, China, and Ukraine are all mixed up on the same web. But the war in Ukraine's the main thing. Not only is it sad for the people involved, but it's also changing the economy and strategy in ways we have not seen in a long time. It's not just about the money. Real people are being pushed out of their homes and some are dying. In this case, it's not like a real estate crash in China because of this. Of course, that would cost a lot of money, but not as much as what's happening in Ukraine. Even though all of these problems are getting a lot of attention, inflation is one thing that everyone is really worried about. It's like that sneaky monster that everyone knows is there but doesn't want to deal with. You don't need a famous economist to tell you what's going on because your wallet tells you. It used to cost $50 to fill up your truck. Now it costs $125. That extra $75 isn't just going away. It's money that you were planning on spending on something nice for your spouse or on yourself. It's impossible to avoid inflation. It's like an unseen force that slowly takes away your ability to spend. Each time you stop at the gas station or go to the shop, it's right there in front of you. That's why everyone is wondering whether we are going to have a recession. Even worse, are we already in one? Jim Rickards told us a few months ago, yeah, it's coming. Maybe by the end of the year or the beginning of next year. But now, well, we are already in it. It's no longer just over the horizon. It's right here. It's in front of us, whether we like it or not. And this is not just a shot from the hip. The research supports his claims. You see, 2 quarters in a row of falling GDP are usually enough to call it a recession. That's the general rule. There are a few other things that play a role, like unemployment. These boxes are now checked based on the most recent numbers. It's not the worst recession ever, but that's like saying, I have pneumonia, but I'm not going to die. Are you still sick? No matter how you look at it, this is still a recession. And then there is the stock market, which is still acting like everything is fine. Every horror movie that has that scene where the characters are laughing and having a great time, but they have no idea that a monster is sneaking up behind them, people are still jumping in to buy the dip, and the market's still too expensive. You can hear people like Jim Cramer shouting to buy Netflix or something. However, a lot of this trade is not even done by people these days. The engineers who wrote them are very good at math, but they may not go out much. They are trading methods that don't take into account people while sitting in a different part of the world. The real crash has not happened yet, but it is on the way. The stock market's still going strong. Everyone's whistling by the graves as if they can't see what's going on. When we talk about things getting worse, our attention should go back to inflation again because it's a real pain. This kind of inflation has not been seen since the 1980s. It's hard to describe how crazy it was to people who didn't live through it. Things could cost more the next morning after you went to bed one night. You had to buy something right away because you knew the price would go up in even a week. It was like a panic, and everyone was in a hurry to spend their money before it lost even more value. What about today? It's beginning to look the same. There is no doubt that inflation is back and worse than ever. However, back in the 1970s, a supply-side shock caused prices to rise. The big one was the Arab oil boycott in 1973. Then there was the Iranian Revolution in 1979, which was even bigger. The price of oil went through the roof, which raised the cost of everything else. There was a classic cost of cost-push inflation, which happens when the price of things goes up and people have to pay more for them. It's a little different this time, though. Prices are going up for things like oil, so yes, we are seeing some of that cost-push inflation, but another force is at play, and it has to do with demand. People are worried, and when people are worried, they buy everything they can see, which makes prices go up even more. Now we're in the middle of an economic storm, and it's not just the numbers. It's about how this is making our lives different. Cutting back on things like gas and food that people can't live without helps them pay for things they do need. Economists call this demand destruction, which means that people buy less because prices are higher, and this slows down the economy. It keeps going and going, which is one reason why inflation is so hard to stop once it starts. The big question now is, where does this end? Are we about to go through another 5 years of high inflation like we did in the 1970s? Is this just a short-term glitch? We don't know, but every problem seems to be bigger and scarier than the last one. Remember when the economy crashed in 2008? It was a tough one, but we got through it with a huge loan and a lot of government help. But because the problems keep getting worse, each bailout has to be bigger than the last. Things are getting more and more important, and according to Jim Rickards, we will hit a wall at some point. It's getting dangerously close to being time for the Fed to find out what its limits are. Rickards once shared that the world's money supply became tight after Russia stopped paying its debts. Not only Russia, but every market around the world was affected. It was like a chain effect. A hedge fund called Long-Term Capital Management, which was full of derivatives, almost brought the whole banking system down. The Fed jumped in with a huge bailout just hours before the whole thing went down. In 2008, we were in the same situation. Then all of a sudden, it looked like every other big bank was going to fail too. Once more, the Fed had to step in and stop the chain of events. But every time, more is at stake, and the Fed's tools to stop the problem are getting more and more limited. So what do you do when you know you're about to face another crisis? Things that will keep their value no matter what are what you want to own. As long as the economy stays strong, things like land, real estate, gold, and silver will still be there. Art is being bought by a lot of people, like the $200 million Andy Warhol picture of Marilyn Monroe. That would have cost $50,000 in the 1970s. We're not saying buying a photograph or painting is bad, but you should still be careful with your money, even if you're not looking for $1 million picture. Things that are real and have value, like oil stocks and natural resources. These are the things that will hold up in the next crisis, which there will be one. And don't forget about the old dollar either. Since the last paper treasury note was printed in 1979, it has been a digital currency for a long time. One thing about the dollar is that it has been the world's main currency for decades, but that might not always be the case. People in other countries will look for other ways to deal with the U.S., using economic penalties as a weapon. We've seen it before with Russia, whose funds were frozen and which was kicked out of the world's currencies. China and Saudi Arabia are now talking about moving away from the dollar and looking to trade in other currencies. If enough countries do that, the dollar might not be able to stay the world's main currency for much longer. And it's not just the dollar losing its power. It has to do with the world's banking system going into chaos. We can already see the cracks, and the next big problem could make them even bigger. These are times when the world's governments and central banks might not have the tools to fix what's wrong. And this is scary as a thought, because it means the economy could be in a state of chaos we haven't seen in our lifetimes. In simple words, the world economy is a big, complicated web of links, and it's under more stress than it has been in a long time right now. There are a lot of moving parts and things that could go wrong. If just one of them does, it could start a chain reaction that no one is ready for.